Hey, what's up, guys? Welcome back to another episode. This is Take It to the Hizzy. I'm Justin, your host. This is Take It to the Hizzy number 5. Today we're going to be covering Fantasy Hot Stove, fantasy relevant questions from every team around the league. We're going to go team by team, division by division, back and forth from the NFC to the AFC. I have a lot of teams to cover here, so we're just going to kind of jump right into it. A lot of questions to answer. Starting off with the NFC North, we're going to go with the Lions first. We're looking at Kerryon Johnson. Will he finish as a running back 1? Instant reaction is no. I would have him just outside of the running back 1 tier. I think that he's going to finish probably somewhere between like 15 to 18 in the running back pool and then the PPR format. In standard formats, he may have a little bit more value because of the consistent carry workload. He does have C.J. Anderson behind him that's going to be working on third downs and is a pretty steady handcuff to their offense. They've been vocal about their commitment to the run game. I'm not certain that's going to be the case. The weapons there reflect kind of a different strategy, in my opinion, or at least more opportunity in the passing game with guys like Kenny Golladay, Marvin Jones, T.J. Hawkinson, Jesse James. You do have those 2 running backs there in Johnson and Anderson, but I think that they could get a little bit more done in the passing game with a fully healthy Matthew Stafford. Which leads me into the next question. Should you start Matthew Stafford? Yeah, I think you should. In Superflex leagues, I think he is definitely valuable in that format. However, in standalone 1 quarterback leagues, I'm not sure that he's going to be a starter, in the first couple of weeks. I think that people are going to wait and see on him. No one's going to be reaching for him to be their starter in like a 12-team or 14-team format. And maybe some deeper leagues, I suppose, like 16 or 18 if you're really going that deep. And you need a starting quarterback and you're just waiting very, very late. I could see that, but the options are pretty limited for him for his fantasy value. If you're in Superflex, I would definitely recommend having him as your second guy just because he does have a lot of upside this year, in my opinion, playing fully healthy. Next question is T.J. Hawkinson, a top 10 tight end. Instant answer is no. I would say that the rookie tight ends, people kind of need to slow the roll with them unless they're coming into a situation where they are just available for the volume. A guy like Evan Ingram a couple years ago, he did finish as a top 5 tight end as a rookie. It's just not consistent. It's not likely in the NFL that continues to happen, that rookie tight ends have that type of success. Again, that was 2 years ago as well, for Ingram. And in that situation, he was just eating up a lot of volume. As you saw last year, he wasn't as healthy. So Hawkinson, not a top 10 tight end this year. He does have Jesse James there that's actually starting ahead of him on the depth chart. They are going to be doing a lot of double tight end sets. They're going to use both of those guys in the passing and the blocking game to establish the run, early and often apparently. So both of them will be on the field, but I do see James having a little bit more of a snap count percentage share over Hawkinson, at least right out of the gate. They went out and spent some money on on Jesse James. So money does play in the NFL. Especially if you're doing your job and you're keeping yourself on the field. So that's the Lions. Moving on to the Bears. First down, we got running backs. What running back will register the most carries? Cohen, Mike Davis, or David Montgomery? For the most carries, I'm going to say David Montgomery. I think he will get a lot of volume in the running game just of the way that Nagy likes to set up the inside zone run offense. He tried to use it a lot last year with Howard, but it just didn't really stick. I don't think the scheme was really fit for Howard's skill set. I think David Montgomery does add a little bit more change of pace, so he will get a lot more carries, I think, than Cohen and Davis. But Cohen will be used a lot more as like a hybrid wide receiver and running back. He had nearly 200 touches last year. Just under 100 targets, 99 carries, I believe. So, he's going to get used in the offense. And then Mike Davis is kind of there really just to, really aggravate fantasy owners stealing points from Cohen and Montgomery most likely. I do believe he'll get some action in the single back sets. I do think that he's going to get some pass catching opportunities, Mike Davis. So, not necessarily that they have a three-headed monster. I'd like to think that as a Bears fan, but I think they're all going to eat from each other essentially. But I do believe that Cohen will have the most consistent floor every week. I do think that there is going to be some David Montgomery peaks and valleys this year in fantasy. I think that we could see some big weeks, and I think that we could see some underwhelming weeks as well. Second down, will Mitch take a step forward? Will Mitch Trubisky take a step forward? Instant answer is no. I think that he'll do better. I think that he'll improve. But does he take a big leap forward? Not necessarily. Seeing his arm, he has a fairly decent deep ball. It's just that he's kind of inconsistent. He'll throw like 8 really good balls, deep passes, intermediate routes, whatever it is, and then he'll just come up, just flubbing one out to the flat for, looking like there's nothing on it, a couple of times. And, there are some situations where he kind of stalls the offense, especially in the passing game. So need him to take a step forward. Does he take a big one? I don't think so. I think he does improve on his stats from last year, but they need to let him pass a little bit more too. They are a little bit more balanced of an offense. So if they can let him pass a little bit more and he builds that consistency, like I was saying, he could be dangerous. Not someone that I'm drafting this year. He had a couple of big weeks last year, another peaks and valleys type of player, but not someone that I'm drafting this year. As far as the rushing quarterbacks, I'm looking at like Lamar Jackson, Josh Allen, some guys that really have a focus around that portion of their game as mobile quarterbacks. Who is the best pass catching option in this offense? Third down, Burton, Allen Robinson, Allen Robinson, Anthony Miller, or Taylor Gabriel. The guy that I would be targeting out of that bunch is probably Taylor Gabriel because I'm getting him so cheap. I'm getting him in the back ends of the draft. A lot of people are starting to upgrade their ADP on Anthony Miller. Where I like Anthony Miller, he's just been inconsistent with his health ever since he's gotten in the league. He's been dealing with some injuries most recently. I don't want to invest like mid-round stock in him. And a guy that hasn't shown me much of health consistency. So I like Taylor Gabriel. I like his gadgetry type of player. The skill set that he can bring. When running sweeps, screens, has the speed to go deep. Allen Robinson just seems a little bit slower each year to me. He does have a deep ball threat for sure. If he breaks free open downfield, he's going to be dangerous. But he just seems like a step slower all the time. Could be just from his health injuries from before, wasn't fully recovered. Maybe he takes a leap forward, but the offense just doesn't pass enough to me to grab Allen Robinson. I like him in like the high 20s, low 30s for the wide receivers. If I am going to draft him, I'd like him to be like my third wide receiver or my first bench wide receiver if I'm gonna have him on my roster. Trey Burton is someone that I'm not going to draft. Kind of had an underwhelming year last year. Another year in the offense could certainly help for sure. Having more chemistry, knowing the scheme a little bit more, maybe not being necessarily expected to come in and be the guy. He came in from Philadelphia, was expected to kind of contribute to the offense right away consistently. So maybe that all adds to it. But Taylor Gabriel is a guy I like the most there just because of the cost, the price. So, the guys that I'm targeting in the Bears offense would be like Gabriel and Cohen and maybe Montgomery. I'd like a situation where I could maybe stack Montgomery and Cohen and kind of see who takes the lead there, or just shore up my shares and make sure no one else has them, and start those guys that maybe on some big available weeks where they have a really juicy matchup. Next up, first down, Packers. Who do you prefer, Geronimo Allison or Marquez Valdez-Scantling, MVS? I prefer Geronimo Allison right now. Allison's going to be coming out of the slot. I mentioned before in the previous article or video about Aaron Rodgers throwing to the slot, has like 117 quarterback rating throwing to that position. It's like 112 or 111 to the outside the numbers to where MVS is going to be playing. So there is some disparity there, and there is some comfort there. You're going to hear a lot about people talking all year about targeting slot players, and that's just because of the fact that they're just easy targets. They are used as the safety blankets, as the shield, to the blitzes and whatnot. And you just see that the league developing more that direction, a more pass-friendly league. A lot of quicker chunk plays, a lot of quick hits. But back to Allison MVS here. Allison, to me, showed enough chemistry last year with Aaron Rodgers coming into the season to start the year to give me just a little bit more of an edge on MVS with the success that he had in the mid part of last year. MVS was playing very well with Rodgers. Rodgers has talked up MVS this offseason. I just see Allison as a little bit more of a type or scheme of Davante Adams. Like, they're kind of a similar player. And Rodgers has clearly showed a favoritism to Adams. He's still going to throw to him a lot. When we're talking about, red zone targets and, touchdown or not touchdown, but end zone targets, I think that Allison would have an edge on MVS in that regard. Maybe they eat at each other's volume all year long, but I think that when it's all said and done, Allison will have more fantasy points, whether it's with more touchdowns or more yardage. Maybe MVS has more catches. I'm not necessarily saying that one player will completely outstat the other at the major categories like catches, yards, or touchdowns. Allison could have a lot more yards, more touchdowns, but MVS could have more catches. But I do believe Allison will, at the end of the year, will have more fantasy points. If I had to, put a side bet or a wager, wink, wink, anybody, on something like that, I would go Allison over MVS. Will Aaron Jones finish as a RB1 second down? He has a lot of potential to finish as an RB1. I don't know if he's going to in this pass-friendly offense. If he catches a lot of balls out of the backfield, which I think that he can, because LaFleur coming in, from the Titans, where he had the second most, I think, run volume in the league last year, to an offense that's going to pass the ball a lot this year, I have to think that he's going to include passing to the running back in his offensive game plan. So I think that he's going to get him the ball. Aaron Jones' durability is what keeps me questioning his RB1 value, really. Again, another guy that's come in, hasn't been able to show consistent health. When he's there, he has a lot of opportunity. He has a high ceiling. It's just that the injuries, sometimes, they do go to the pass a little bit more. It's just pulling me back out of that RB1 conversation. Again, kind of in the same mix as like a Kerryon Johnson, like that 15 to 18, 15 to 19. He's right there. And right now we have a lot of healthy running backs, and we do have some uncertainty with guys like Zeke and Gordon and Gurley. We're not sure how healthy he is still. Not until we actually see it with our own eyes. So he has opportunity because there's some top guys that can get pulled back down, but I'm going to say no. I'm going to say that he's not going to finish as an RB1. I think that there's just a little bit too many questions there. I think that LaFleur will go to his other running backs just for the sake of it because, again, you're talking about a guy that wants to establish the run. Aaron Jones may just be used as more of the pass-catching back if one of these other guys establishes themselves in the run game. So I could see him going to also like a hot hand situation as well, just because that he does want to include the run and easy, safe plays into his offense. Third down, over under 1,150 yards for Davante Adams. So this number, I believe, was the average between, or maybe it was a little bit less than the average between last season, which was like over 1,300 yards, and the season before that, which was like around, I want to say 800 something yards, 858. So over 1,150 yards for Davante Adams. I say yes. If you find any sports books that's throwing a number that low, 1,100s, even a 1,200. I'd say over 1,200 yards for Davante Adams because Aaron Rodgers just keeps talking and talking about how he wants to feed him the ball more and more. Davante Adams is a legitimate wide receiver for 200 targets. So any of these low numbers that you see for Davante Adams, 1,200. 1,250, I'd probably say over 1,250. Maybe I should have had this number set at 1,250, a little bit higher. A guy like Hopkins last year put up like 1,500 yards. If Davante Adams was to receive 200 targets, you're talking about 150, 160 catches, and God knows how many yards he'd go for that. So Davante Adams has a super safe floor every week. Look to grab him in the first round wherever you can in the back end, after the big running backs go. I think he's absolutely safe to hit over that number. Last team in the NFC North, we are looking at the Vikings. Who would you prefer to have, Diggs or Thielen? For the value that I'm getting them at, I want Thielen because he is just continually getting disrespected. I note from this Sunday's previous draft that I had, in the third round, Adam Thielen went at the 7th pick. Tip off to Dan's team that selected him. The teams ahead of him selected, all in this round. All these players went ahead of Adam Thielen, and a couple of them I'm gonna have to call out: Brandon Cooks, Devontae Freeman, Chris Godwin, ouch. Kerryon Johnson, Jones, Gurley. The running backs are okay. But Brandon Cooks, Devontae Freeman, Chris Godwin, ouch, ouch, ouch. Over Adam Thielen. This guy's had 1,300 yards the past 2 seasons. He had 100 catches last year and over 90 catches the previous season. The dude just gets disrespected in these drafts over and over and over. It's crazy. And if he didn't go here, he may have even gone deeper because running backs seem to be the tune in this round. Right after him was Derrick Henry, David Montgomery, and then, Robert Woods, another Rams wide receiver. Robert Woods actually went second. That's interesting. I see a lot of him going as the first Rams wide receiver. And then Mark Ingram again, Chris Carson after that, Marlon Mack after that. So running backs were kind of the trend in this round. Adam Thielen, ton of value. Stephon Diggs, I like him a lot. Injury, not prone, but injury past. I think that he'll stay there. But I believe because that he is the over-the-top guy, break the coverage deep, he's going to be used as more of a decoy, and Adam Thielen eats up everything underneath, and he can still go deep, and he can get open downfield. So I like Thielen just a little bit more. If I'm looking to grab Diggs, I'm looking at that end of the 4th round, into the 5th round if I can, just because I'm just a little bit more behind him. But either way, they're going to eat at each other. Diggs could come out week 1 and completely dominate the volume, and then Thielen could come out the opposite and do it the very next week. But Adam Thielen, the past 2 seasons, he's just been super, super consistent. I will take Thielen over Diggs all day, every day. Second down, should I draft Kyle Rudolph? I will answer no. Do not draft Kyle Rudolph. Kyle Rudolph is just kind of shown again, like I was mentioning to Allen Robinson, just a foot slower, speed slower every year, another step behind. Is a target. He's there. But I like Irv Smith's upside. I like his athleticism, his speed. I know I was just talking about Hawkinson not being able to succeed, as a rookie tight end, top 10 tight end. Well, I don't think Irv Smith's going to be a top 10 tight end either. But at the same time, I think he's going to cut into Kyle Rudolph's workload because he can provide a little bit more in the passing game, where Kyle Rudolph is more of a perennial blocker for them, right? A perennial protector. So when they're running 2 tight end sets, I look for Irv Smith to be the pass catching option and Kyle Rudolph to be on blocking assignments. So I think that Kyle Rudolph is valuable to the Vikings in the sense that he will actually allow Irv Smith space and opportunity underneath. But at the same time, I'm not going to draft him where he's going. I think that he's not going to be getting the volume for where he's going. I want to say he's getting drafted as like tight end 10, tight end 11, 12 in that range. And to me, he should be deeper with like the Greg Olsons, the Jordan Reeds, farther beyond that. So for his price, I'm not going to pay for him. I just don't recommend Kyle Rudolph. Not quite the same of years past. How early can I draft Alexander Mattison? As early as you want, really. I think that he has a lot of opportunity in the offense. Dalvin Cook is there, likes to get hurt, hasn't played a full season. I like Dalvin Cook's upside a lot. Had a great preseason, great training camp, looks healthy as hell. Hope he doesn't get hurt. But I think Alexander Mattison actually will have standalone value every week because they're going to want to protect Dalvin Cook. They're not going to want to overwork him. They're going to want him to be available for the playoffs if he's healthy. If he's healthy for 6 straight weeks, oh my goodness, they're going to be going crazy. They'll probably trim back his workload to 12 to 15 touches or something like that, especially if this Madison kid is still doing work and if Mike Boone is there still, succeeding in the backfield. So 8th round, I think is fair for Alexander Mattison because I think at some point you're going to be able to use him in your flex. So as long as you have all your starters filled and you're throwing him on your bench or maybe in a second flex spot, then yeah, I feel very comfortable with him. He's a really good handcuff and a guy that will have standalone value. Kind of there with like a Lat Murray, has value every week, but is also like one of the best handcuffs to have based on his offense. Okay, that was the first division. Switching over to the AFC South, we're looking at the Colts. First down. By the way, did you guys hear that Andrew Luck retired? Wasn't that weird? Blew up my phone. Anyways, what can we expect from Jacoby Brissett? I think above average, right? Above average. I'm not going to say above average at best. I think that he can provide an above average value to the offense and, kind of keep everyone else's values where they're at. I think that T.Y. Hilton isn't going to be hurt too much. I think that Marlon Mack's value isn't hurt all that much, really. Obviously, you're going from like a top tier type of quarterback to like a back end, type of quarterback talent, a mid value, if you will. But Jacoby Brissett has a history, working with, guys like Bill Belichick, Tom Brady. Frank Reich was a backup quarterback. He kind of speaks the same language, if you will. So I think there's a lot to work with there, and I think that their system is going to, really get the best out of him, or he's going to get the best out of it. If anything, he'll be more of a field general, manage the game, not be asked to do too much. I think the tight ends will both benefit. I think Nyheim Hines will benefit, but I think that Mack and Hilton, their values will stay pretty, stay close to where they're at. I don't think it's too big of a fall. It's not like they're falling off a shelf. I don't think that they should be going 3-4 rounds later than what they are. Just a round, maybe 2. If you can. T.Y. Hilton in the 4th. That's sweet. That's great. That's gold for me. Marlon Mack in the 4th or the 5th, even juicier. I love it. You're talking about a guy that's going to get, to potentially bell cow type of workload. So leading into my next question, second down, are you still drafting Mack as an RB2? Yes, I am, because of where you can get him, 5th, 6th round now even, because people are just so falling off with the Colts and they're just so angry at Andrew Luck. You can get him that deep. You can. Some people may not let you in some deeper leagues, like 14-team leagues, because if they're at the back end of the draft and they're like, I see him there, I got to grab him, something like that. But in 12-team leagues, I think you can get him probably in the 5th or 6th round, no problem. So yeah, definitely still be targeting Mack. Offensive line there, super strong. Who do you prefer, Ebron or Doyle? Doyle. I prefer Doyle. And that's because of just the snap count percentage. I think that Ebron is a favorite target of Brissett, so there is some chemistry there. I'm not sure what to think about as far as the red zone. I think everyone has really noticed that Andrew Luck really likes to throw to big body tight ends. Mo Ali Cox, Eric Ebron. They cleaned up last year on very limited pass catching volume, right? Eric Ebron getting like 13 touchdowns on 60 plus catches. That's crazy. But Doyle, he has a little bit more upside in the sense that he is a pass-catching wide receiver. He actually had a lot of success with Brissett 2 years ago when they were playing together when Andrew Luck was hurt on the team. So I like Doyle's upside. Plus, you're getting him practically for free in the back end, 15th round plus, if not just a little bit before that. So his value is just a little bit too juicy for me to pass up, later in drafts over Eric Ebron, who's going as like the 8th, 9th, 10th, tight end. Maybe 11th or 12th now after the Brissett replacing Luck, but not as far as deep as Doyle's going. So I definitely prefer Doyle over Ebron this year. I just think Ebron had himself a moment last year and good form for doing so. Okay, next team, Houston Texans. Is Duke Johnson a RB1? Instant answer is no. So where I think that he could potentially hit like the top 10, top 12 in running back scoring in PPR, he would really need to be used as like similar to a James White, how the Patriots use him in New England. Going to need to get fed a lot of passing opportunities. Going to need to provide efficiency in the running game. The offensive line there still isn't great. So I do think that people are kind of overreacting a little bit on Duke Johnson. He's going to need to be used in the passing game a lot because we're not really quite sure about what we're going to get from the offensive line just yet. But I think he is in the strong running back 2 range. I think that that's a pretty realistic place for him to fall at the end of the year. The final rankings come to the end of the year. Second down, how early will you draft Deshaun Watson? Excuse me, I'm not drafting Deshaun Watson. For his draft stock, where he's going, where he's available, I'm just not going to reach into the early rounds, for a quarterback, for a Patrick Mahomes, for Deshaun Watson. A lot of the leagues that I play in prioritize depth, so I want a lot of running backs and wide receivers. I want those skill positions on my team in the early rounds. I want to get those values and just, sit on a quarterback late. So can't really answer the question because I'm not going to draft him. If you're going to draft him, I would say to wait for at least the 4th and 5th round if you can. Those are the drafts where Patrick Mahomes is not going in the 1st or 2nd round. If Patrick Mahomes does get drafted in the first or second round in your draft, Watson's going to go probably in the 3rd or 4th. He's not going to go that much farther than Mahomes because someone is going to pull the trigger in their head. Hey, I have to take him right here. Next pick, he's not going to come back to me. I really want Watson, etc. So that's how he's going to get drafted in most leagues. Third down, over or under 1,400 yards for Hopkins. I'm going to say over. Get to the books. Put those bets in. Over 1,400 receiving yards for Hopkins this year. I think that Will Fuller's availability in the offense is actually going to help Hopkins. He will allow less double coverage on because Will Fuller is a guy that can blow up the top, that can go deep. He's a very speedy wide receiver, so he's going to open up options in the passing game. They're already missing Kute, so there will be a little bit more volume out of the get-go for Hopkins and Fuller and probably Duke Johnson. But I really like Hopkins to hit over 1,400 yards. That seems pretty easy to me. Last year he had over 1,500. Tennessee Titans, will Ryan Tannehill move ahead of Marcus Mariota? Yes, he will. Tannehill will take the job from Mariota at some point, in my opinion. Mariota just doesn't seem to be doing enough. Even when he is doing things in the field and performing well, he would put himself in injury risk, try to flip himself into the end zone. I think for like a 2-point conversion or something like that. Just a bonehead play on the goal line for a quarterback in preseason. And Mariota, isn't a part of the new coaching regime, right? Like Vrabel didn't bring him in, he didn't draft him, so it doesn't necessarily have to be committed to him. They may want to go after a quarterback next year. I believe this is a free agency season or contract year. For Marcus Mariota. So yeah, Tannehill's going to take the job. I don't know if it's in week 1, 2, 3, 5, whatever. But at some point he's going to come in if Marcus Mariota is not doing his job. I'm going to bet on Marcus Mariota not getting it done, just based off of what he's shown me thus far. And Tannehill looks good with the wide receiver group. He looks confident knowing the playbook. So he had a really good preseason. There's some good tape on him this year so far. Second down, is Derrick Henry a running back 1? Yeah, I do believe he will be a running back 1. He does have to stay healthy, obviously, to hit those numbers. Early on this summer, I wanted to have him in my top 10. I'm really liking Derrick Henry, what he gave us last year, but he gave a huge amount of production in his fantasy value from only like 2 games last year. Not a lot of people remember this or want to recognize that. They just kind of see that the Titans say they're going to run a lot. There's that big guy, Derrick Henry. He's going to run all over everybody. He looks like a human boulder, and he is. The guy's a machine. He's massive. He looks like a Terminator. If he's there and he's healthy and they're feeding him, yeah, he's going to be an RB1 for sure. For sure, he's going to be a top 12 or 14 running back in the NFL this year if they give him the volume. And they need to give him the volume because he gets better as he gets later into the game when he does have more volume, when he does get more carries. So, guy that gets better as he goes, what's not to like about that? Third down, are you drafting A.J. Brown? No, I'm not drafting A.J. Brown. I like Corey Davis. I like Adam Humphries. I don't see the need to go get A.J. Brown right now. He hasn't shown me enough in preseason or in training camp that warrants me to spend a draft pick on him unless it's super late. And even then, I'm really just handcuffing the top receiving guys, right? Adam Humphries, Corey Davis. Like, they're going to get the most looks. Delaney Walker's still going to get looks. You still have guys there like Tajay Sharp, Taylon Taylor. They're going to get looks. A.J. Brown's going to be kind of in that mix with those guys to start the year. So where I see his opportunity to come in, maybe, bust open a big play, super peaks and valleys, maybe a best ball play at best. Best ball play at best. Okay, next up we have Jacksonville. What wide receiver are you targeting in Jacksonville? D.D. Westbrook. D.D. Westbrook is going to be playing from the slot. He's shown some good chemistry with Nick Foles thus far. Nick Foles does like to throw to the slot, likes to throw to the tight end, as he showed a lot in Philadelphia. Could just be the scheme there, right? You have Zach Ertz as your tight end. Why wouldn't you throw to him a lot? But that's what we have to go off with Nick Foles. That's what we've seen thus far. D.D. Westbrook shows the most promise out of that group. I do like Marquise Lee. I do like DJ Shark. They just haven't shown enough, and we don't really know what type of volume we're going to get in the passing game because, Leonard Fournette is there and he's going to get a ton of volume. So we're not really sure how things are going to get spread out. We haven't seen a ton from Jacksonville the preseason. They haven't really shown their hand per se as to what we're going to get out of their offense. Smart on them. But for fantasy owners, not great, right? What do we expect? What are we going to do? I'm going to draft D.D. Westbrook, probably the only other guy outside of Leonard Fournette that I'll draft on this team on the offensive side of the ball. Bringing me to second down. Are you drafting Nick Foles? No, I'm not. Not drafting Nick Foles. Again, not enough there to show me that I should draft Nick Foles. He won a Super Bowl. He came in, was able to manage things for the Eagles. But what does that mean playing for the Jaguars? What does that mean when you're handing the ball off to a guy like Leonard Fournette? The type of volume that they're talking about. They're talking about Leonard Fournette getting 300 touches this year. That's awesome. Good for Leonard Fournette. Would love to have some Leonard Fournette anywhere I could get him, which brings me to third down. Is Leonard Fournette a RB1? Absolutely, he is an RB1. This year, I think he will be. He's in that 14, 15 range to me. He would have to, kind of fight his way out of it probably at this point, right? So he's right there for me, like right on the cusp of running back 1, running back 2. But I think he's going to hit it this year with the volume that they get. He just needs to stay healthy. Leonard Fournette, easily a guy you can get at the back end of your second round or early into the third round. If you're targeting like wide receivers heavy on early on in your draft. Okay, shifting back to the NFC South. We're looking at the Saints. First down, over under 1,450 all-purpose yards for Alvin Kamara. Over. Anywhere you can get 1,450 to 1,550 in any sports books for Alvin Kamara. Hit the over for all-purpose yards. Gets used a ton in the running game. Gets past the ball a ton in the passing game. I don't even believe he's rushed for 1,000 yards in a regular season. This year, I believe he will. I think he'll rush for 1,000 yards and can easily get still 500 to 700 in the pass catching game. Obviously, if he's running that much more in the rushing game, that there could be some drawback from the receiving game from him. So I think they could easily settle itself out at like 1,000 rushing, 650 to 700 receiving. So I think he'll still get used a lot. They brought in Jared Cook. They have Latavius Murray there. That may even be a little bit of an upgrade from Mark Ingram based off of the way that they're using the running back position. But I still think that Kamara will get used a lot. They protect him. They keep him energized. They keep him conditioned. So they give him a lot of opportunity because of that. Second down, where do you draft Jared Cook? Jared Cook is actually getting pulled into like that 4, 5, 6 tight end range in drafts ahead of guys like Evan Ingram, O.J. Howard, Hunter Henry. So people are really high on him. I would prefer not to take him into that range. I would prefer to keep him at like 7, 8, 9 if I can. If people are not valuing him or they're placing a lot more emphasis on their bigger players, Kamara, Thomas, Murray, guys like that. I'll definitely take him in like the 8th or 9th round if I can. If I have to take him in 6 or 7, I just don't see the value in it. And taking a quarterback, a tight end, that early. If I'm not getting the top tight ends, the top 3 guys, Kelsey, Ertz, Kittle, I'm probably waiting a good long while for a tight end. And Jared Cook's just in that middle mix that, I don't want to spend that draft real estate on right now. Maybe you do, and that's fine. If you're going to go out and get one of those guys, Jared Cook, he is preferred, I'd say, because he is in an offense with the Saints. There's maybe a few less questions around the Saints offense. Whereas, the Chargers, they have questions with the running game. The Buccaneers, they have questions with the running game. And then Evan Ingram, just don't really have many other pass catchers there. So he could have, kind of a hard time with defensive backs and linebackers if they're focusing in on him more. Not really sure. But I'll draft Jared Cook myself, 7, 8, 9, or I'm sorry, 8, 9, or 10 rounds, as the tight end 8, 9, or 10. In those rounds or much later. But you really have to get them for value, at least for me. If you want to take them in rounds 4, 5, 6, 7, that's a little bit more of a risk. Who do you prefer, Traquan Smith or Ted Ginn? I prefer Ted Ginn because of where I'm getting him later in drafts. Traquan Smith could have developed a lot this offseason, but I like Ted Ginn a lot. I did the article about him being a deep sleeper. He hasn't shown a lot in preseason, and I think that's based off of just limiting him, trying to rest him and keep him fresh for the start of the year. Traquan Smith did come in last year, had some good moments, but he had some low moments as well. He didn't really impress outside of 1 or 2 games, so I'm kind of putting him in the back seat for right now. I'm not necessarily prioritizing going out and getting him. I like other receivers where he's getting drafted. There's a lot of other guys on other teams that have a little bit more upside and a little bit more opportunity maybe, and they're not behind a big guy like Mike Thomas. Okay, next team, the Panthers. Who do you prefer, DJ Moore or Curtis Samuel? I prefer Curtis Samuel. You're getting him at a little bit of a cheaper cost. The other draft I did Sunday, I took Curtis Samuel in the 5th round. Bit of a reach. DJ Moore did go in the front end of that round, like in the first couple picks. I took Curtis Samuel at the back end of that round, but I wanted him. And we only had 2 wide receivers for our position pool. So I started Curtis Samuel paired with Mike Evans. I'm pretty happy with that. Curtis Samuel looks like he's going to be a deep threat for the Panthers this year. I like DJ Moore as well. but I thought that Curtis Samuel showed a little bit more consistency in his stat lines last year. Those stat lines, a lot of games were without Cam Newton, but that shows even more importance to me in the offense, because if you're not performing well like DJ Moore was without Cam Newton, I think that gives Curtis Samuel even more value, because that makes him quarterback proof essentially. A lot of quarterbacks can throw the ball deep. Not everyone can do what Curtis Samuel is doing on his deep routes. I do like DJ Moore. He's got a ton of skill, but he's not a guy that I want to spend the draft stock on. I see people taking him in the 3rd round, and that's crazy to me. I took DJ Moore last year. Maybe I'm a little bit sour still because I did draft him last year for one league to start as a wide receiver, and he did not perform. So maybe I'm a little bit sour. I don't know. Or maybe I'm just a little bit too high on Curtis Samuel. God knows everyone in Carolina is. They made him the training camp team MVP. Who has such an accolade? Who has such an award? Why? I don't know why they did all this, but they hyped up Curtis Samuel. They pulled him up like 4 rounds, all these beat reporters and news reports about him. They're pulling him up draft boards like crazy. So I took him in the 5th round. Boo-hoo. It was definitely a reach for me, but I like where I got him. I like having him on my team first and foremost, and I think he's a guy I'm going to hit on. So I definitely prefer Curtis Samuel over DJ Moore. Where do we draft Cam after his most recent injury? The back end of like 7th round, 8th round, because those other quarterbacks like the Matt Ryans, Drew Brees, they're going to go ahead of him. Russ Wilson's going to go ahead of him now probably. There's going to be a fair amount of quarterbacks that get drafted before Cam. So you just really want to get him as those guys, as that rush of quarterbacks is heading out the door. You just want to get him right after those guys. I could see you still taking him before like a Ben Roethlisberger, before Phillip Rivers. But for me, I would prefer to have one of those 2 guys ahead of Cam right now, just in the first couple of weeks, because, week 1 is not that far away, guys, and you got to win week 1. So I don't really want any questions at the quarterback position, the first couple of weeks. I want to have guys that I'm confident with. I don't need to start rushing to the waiver wire to pick up quarterbacks. So I like Cam a lot this year. I've been talking him up, talking up his arm, his deep ball, how good it's looked. But with the recent injury, I'm a little bit more scared. So I would say to take him out at the back end of that quarterback rush, and maybe like right before like a Phillip Rivers or Ben Roethlisberger. Over or under 3rd down, 1,000 rushing yards for CMC Christian McCaffrey. I will say over 1,000 rushing yards. Yeah, I think they'll try to use him a little bit more in the rushing game this season. I think that they're going to maybe pass him the ball a little bit less with the emergence of Curtis Samuel, with DJ Moore improving, Greg Olsen back. I think that his pass-catching target share is going to go down, so that they will use him more in the rushing game. So yeah, over 1,000 rushing yards. If you can get numbers that low anywhere for CMC, go out and grab them. Okay, next we have the Falcons. Over or under 1,400 receiving yards for Julio. I will say over. Julio is a machine. He is the machine, the beast that moves the Falcons. He's just always open, guys. The guy is just super skilled and super talented when he is, 15 yards beyond the line of scrimmage. Once he gets that far away from the line of scrimmage, you're in big trouble, because you have to pretty much dance with him to stay on top of him, to man up on him, to beat him in zones. The guy, he is coverage proof. Put double on him, it doesn't matter. The guy's a monster. Easily over 1,400 yards for me. Same as with Hopkins. I think both those guys have big years, and I think they get used a lot in their offense. With the Falcons, you have Freeman coming back, but beyond him, the running backs aren't really that impressive. You have Ito Smith, you have Brian Hill there that's starting to get a lot of hype, a lot of talk, just because of Ito Smith's woes. Essentially, he's not performing well, so people are talking uphill behind him. And Freeman, I'm not sure what to expect. He has a full year healthy, or at least offseason healthy. So we'll see what to expect, or we'll see what we get out of him. Not sure what to expect. But at the end of the day, he is a running back too, which brings me to my second down question. Is Devontae Freeman running back too? Yes, he is, because of the offense that he plays in, with the quarterback that he has, wide receivers that he has around him. He will have an opportunity, because there isn't going to be loaded boxes on him, all day, every day. The defenses are going to have to spread things out against the Falcons, and that will open up more space for Devontae Freeman. Kirk Cutter coming in from Tampa isn't great for Freeman. When he was there before, he didn't use him a lot. That's another big reason to believe in the Julio over 1,400 yards. Last time Kirk Cutter was there, Julio had like a career year, I believe. So you have to be confident that Freeman will have that opportunity that he'll get those chances, especially in the red zone. His health is what is a concern. I'm not sure he's going to stay durable for all 16 games, and that's why he would be a questionable RB3, but he's not going to break into the RB1 conversation this year. I'm almost certain of that. I just see the other weapons on the team getting fed a lot more. Julio, Calvin Ridley still there. He'll still get probably a little bit more of a target share this year than he did last year. So you have to expect, some upside there from him, and you also have to expect that the Falcons are probably going to use their other running backs, Ito Smith and Hill. So third down, how early will you draft Matt Ryan? Matt Ryan is a guy that I will take a little bit earlier. Him and Jared Goff and Russell Wilson are some guys that I'll go into some of the earlier rounds to grab if I can. How early I'll draft him? 6th round. May not get him at that price. Probably going like in the 4th or 5th. Because people love quarterbacks. They want the guy that is potentially going to throw over 40 touchdowns, 5,000 yards. Matt Ryan is a potential guy that can put up those types of numbers. I could definitely see him hitting over 4,900 yards, hitting over 40 touchdowns. But like I was saying, that won't leave much for the running game. So we'll see what comes out of the gate there in Atlanta. But I like Matt Ryan to have a big year. I like Julio to have a big year. Moving to the Bucks. Is Chris Godwin the real deal? Is Chris Godwin the real Slim Shady? I just don't know. But there's just so much hype that he's a top 10 wide receiver. If Chris Godwin is a top 10 wide receiver, what is Mike Evans? And that's not a Jeopardy question, okay? I don't understand how people just forget about Mike Evans. He must have had the quietest 1,500-yard season last year that apparently no one on earth is aware of. But Chris Godwin has just gotten so much hype from the coaching staff, from Tampa reporters, from beat writers. I can't take him for his draft stock. I will not take him in the 2nd round. I told you earlier, in round 3 of this draft I had the other night, round 3, Chris Godwin drafted, pick 4, round 3. 3 picks ahead of a guy like Adam Thielen, 2 picks ahead of a guy like Brandon Cooks. Just crazy to me. That is just preseason hype train craziness. If he winds up hitting these numbers, who's up? All about it. Go do it, Chris Godwin. I've had him previous seasons. I'm a big fan. I love him. But the hype is just too much. Do not overvalue him. Do not take him in the 2nd, 3rd. If you want to take him in the 4th round as maybe wide receiver 2, now we're talking. Now we're a little bit more comfy in the value, at least in my opinion. 2nd down, what running back will record the highest fantasy total at the end of the year? Dare Ogunbowale. Yeah, I think Ogunbowale is going to take off for this team. He is going to open the year as like a pass-catching running back. I think he's just going to earn himself more touches. He's going to work himself up to like 14 to 16 touches every game, and he'll wind up being the guy there because Peyton Barber and Free Rojo, hashtag Free Rojo, they're not doing it. They're not getting it done, and they've shown as much. They've been unimpressive in the preseason, in training camp. All of last season, they were unimpressive. Both kind of have a knack for getting hurt, or at least being injury prone, or not being durable, or however you want to call it. So give me some Dare Ogunbowale, highest fantasy total at the end of the year for the Tampa Bay Bucks. 3rd down, can we trust Jameis Winston? No, you can't. Jameis Winston is still not an accurate passing quarterback. He just doesn't have a lot of consistency. Arians could come in and be the quarterback whisperer. I guarantee he could have come into a game, be playing really well. He's 10 for 13, 145 yards, maybe a touchdown or 2. And then the second half of that game, he's going to go, 2 for 14 for 2 interceptions. That's who Jameis Winston is. If Bruce Arians can, whisper his ass out of it, that's great. That's awesome. But I'm not going to instill a ton of draft stock into Winston. I don't have any shares of Winston anywhere as of this time, even in best ball, which I think is probably his best format for him, for his fantasy value. So not a guy I can trust. The best thing about Tampa Bay's other weapons, Evans, Godwin, these running backs, the tight ends, they don't throw interceptions. So I can have all of them all I want and expect the Buccaneers to have to come out and throw because their defense is pretty bad. They'll have to be playing catch up in a lot of games. So I want all the shares I can get of their offense, based off of just their volume. They're not going to be a slow moving running offense because they don't have the guys that can do that. Even Ogunbowale, even him, he's going to be a change-up pace guy. He's not going to be a slow moving the chains type of running back if they use him a lot. He's going to be a change-up pace guy that, in my opinion, really fits the mold of the offense and what they need from the running back position to kind of go on the air raid attack, similar to Arizona. All right, next division, AFC East. We have the Jets, Jets, Jets. Will Le'Veon Bell be a RB1? Will Le'Veon Bell be a RB1? Will Le'Veon Bell be a RB1? Be his next rap. Be on his next playlist. Yeah, he'll be an RB1. He has to catch a lot of balls, in my opinion. The offensive line still isn't great. They brought in Ryan Khalil. He'll definitely help build a line, get some consistency there. They've been using Ty Montgomery. I think that he could eat at some touches for Le'Veon Bell in the passing game, and that's where Le'Veon Bell is going to need to get volume to be an RB1. Excuse me. To be an RB1, he's going to have to catch a lot of balls. I think he'll get there. I think he'll catch a lot of balls, but there are some threats to it. I don't think he'll be a verge RB2. I think he's going to be right there at the back end of the RB1 group. So, yeah, I say he's an RB1, probably somewhere between 12 to 14. Over under 3,800 passing yards for Sam Darnold. Give me the over. I think that they're going to have to pass a lot this year. Darnold's passing has really improved. He's got a real bullet of a throw, a real bullet of an arm. Really liking what I'm seeing. Has a ton of chemistry so far with Jamison Crowder, new wide receiver coming into Washington, going to be working out of the slot. Has shown comfortability with Robbie Anderson, shown comfortability throwing to the running backs, throwing out to the flats. You have a guy like Chris Herndon there that's going to be coming back after, I think, 4 or 6 games, something like that. Got a guy like there with Eric Tomlinson that's actually producing at the tight end position in camp that Darnold has also kind of shown some favoritism to. So I like what I see out of the Jets. I just think that he could also throw a good amount of interceptions too. I think he could maybe get reckless. I've seen him take some questionable throws, at least as far as where he's actually throwing to. But other than that, he's got great downfield vision. He can really manipulate the pocket very well. So yeah, I'm pretty high on Darnold this year. Definitely a back-end quarterback that I would invest some shares in, especially in a super flex league. But I throw Darnold on my bench in a one quarterback league if I have the depth there, just because I think that he'll take off at some point and maybe go on a stretch for some really big weeks. What pass catcher do you favor the most on the Jets? Jamison Crowder, as I was kind of just alluding to from the Darnold connection. Robbie Anderson is nice, really talented wide receiver, going a little bit too rich for my taste, for my cost. So I like Jamison Crowder because I can get him in the back end rounds, round 10 plus probably, or maybe 8 or 9 even as like my bench wide receiver. Not a guy that I have to commit to being my starter, but has the upside to provide you a pretty steady floor every week. So definitely a guy that I would be targeting later in drafts. This is the AFC East, by the way. I don't think I mentioned we started a new division, so that was the Jets. Now we have Buffalo, the Bills. What RB is most valuable to own on the Bills? I don't know. Devin Singletary is who I would be going after. LaShawn McCoy, Frank Gore, not impressing me. TJ Yeldon is going really, really late, so you can get him for free if you want to. Just not sure how he's going to get used in the passing game. I watched the game the other night for the Bills in preseason where Yeldon didn't do anything in the rushing game, but he was like leading the team in pass catching and yards and pass catching. So not really certain how he's going to be used. Devin Singletary is most standalone value for me just because he could be there all year and be healthy, playing behind guys like Frank Gore and LaShawn McCoy who could be getting used a lot early on and then get hurt or miss some games, and then Devin Singletary comes in, provides that steady floor and then never gives back the position. That's how I see things playing out. How it actually happens, we will see. I'm not sure, but I think that's what's going to wind up happening. Devin Singletary is going to wind up coming in after several weeks of either unsuccessful running from those big guys or they're just hurt or banged up. What wide receivers do you favor the most on the Bills? People are talking about Cole Beasley quite a bit. I like John Brown. John Brown's shown a pretty strong connection with Josh Allen so far in camp and in preseason, so I like the things that I'm seeing there. Getting him super late in drafts, you can get him past the 10th round typically. Not too many people are targeting him or favoring him, so you can definitely get him later. Go after John Brown over Cole Beasley. Over under 600 rushing yards for Allen. I will say over. He had, I think, just about 600 last year, or maybe just under 600 rushing yards last year, and that was under unfull season. He didn't play a full season last year. So I definitely think that he can. He had consecutive games where he was hitting over 100 rushing yards. I think 600 is kind of a low number for him, actually. Maybe 700 or 800 should be more realistic. But his passing yards, probably not going to hit over 4,000. He did have some games last year where he threw over 200 yards, many more games than Lamar Jackson had over passing that much. So he's a guy that I would prefer over Lamar Jackson. They're talking about Lamar Jackson throwing like 30 times a game. That's asinine. That's crazy for a rushing quarterback who's practically a running back. That's nuts for me. So I like Allen a lot. Over 600 rushing yards this year. Go ahead and target him. Probably somewhere in rounds 14 through 16. People are definitely going after him because of his rushing capabilities. New England Patriots. First down. Are you drafting Josh Gordon? No. Josh Gordon went in the 4th round, I believe, of this draft I did the other night. That's crazy. That's just nuts to me. We have no idea what we're going to get from him this year. Yeah. Round 4, pick 10, Josh Gordon. Julian Edelman went in the same round at pick 8. It's just crazy to me. I don't understand that. I like Josh Gordon. The upside is there. The talent is there. But is he going to play the full season? How do we know? He could leave at any point. Like I said, there's a ton of upside there. There's a ton to like. Obviously, Tom Brady likes him a lot. The Patriots love him. They've been paying him to not do anything and be a Super Bowl champion while not doing anything. It's kind of crazy. Glad to see that he's back there. I'll take him later, much, much later, like rounds 9 or 10 if he's there. If people are just like, fuck Josh Gordon, I'm like, sure, I'll get him here. This is value. I can take him here. This isn't risky to me. But putting all that risk into the 4th or 5th round, oh my gosh, no, don't do that. Please don't do that. Wait for Josh Gordon if you're going to draft him, or don't draft him at all. Okay, next up we have the Dolphins. Who wins the quarterback job in Miami? I'm going to say Ryan Fitzpatrick over Rosen. Fitzpatrick has, to me, just appeared a little bit more aloof these past couple of weeks. I think he's going to come into week 1 a lot more aggressive as the starter. I think he'll have the job. Rosen just doesn't really provide any upside to the offense, in my opinion. The other weapons in the offense, I think, will be better suited with Fitzpatrick at the helm. And other defenses are just going to have to respect Fitzpatrick's deep ball and his abilities to move the ball down the field more than Rosen. So I definitely say Fitzpatrick over Rosen. Which running back do you prefer, Ballage or Drake? Right now, I prefer Ballage. They're talking about moving Drake to potentially Houston with a trade paired with like Kenny Stills for Clowney. That's kind of like some fantasy type trade hot stove talk, but I'm not really sure what's going on there. So I'm preferring Ballage because he's been with the first team offense, all preseason, all training camp. They've shown a clear favoritism to him. They haven't shown a favoritism to Drake, who they didn't feed the ball enough last year when they should have, who they haven't prioritized in this preseason and in training camp. So yeah, definitely Ballage over Drake. Are you drafting Devontae Parker? No, I'm not. I would never do that. Neither should you. Moving on. NFC East, looking at the Eagles. Are you drafting Miles Sanders? I'll draft Miles Sanders if I can for like a flex spot or my first bench running back. The Eagles running back room, super loaded, super full, right? Miles Sanders, Jordan Howard, Wendell Smallwood, Corey Clement, Josh Adams, and Darren Sproles. Six guys. That's a lot. That's more than one. That's more than two. And double 3. I don't know what to expect. I think Miles Sanders is the type of guy that can take a bell cow workload, but I don't believe they'll use him like that. I think he can get used in the pass catching game. I think that he'll have a fair amount of rushing yards at the end of this year, but I don't want to overdraft him. I don't want to take him anywhere below round 7. 7 is probably like the firm number for me for Miles Sanders, and he would have to be going into my flex or going onto my bench as my first running back. You get some injuries in that backfield with some of those guys, Smallwood, Clement, even Adams. Obviously, Sproles is old as hell, so he could get hurt doing anything. So there's opportunity. There's opportunity there. Coming out of the gate, I don't know if I want to start him in the first couple of weeks unless he is coming into a flex position. Just because I'm concerned. They could use Jordan Howard in the red zone as well. He's a good downhill runner. So value there, not super high on the draft stock. Between rookie running backs, I prefer like Josh Jacobs. I think he's going to get a lot more volume in Oakland, but you're paying for that volume, like in the 4th or 5th round, probably still. some leagues even the third round, just depending on how quick the running backs go. So drafting Miles Sanders, 7th round or later. Over under 100 catches for Zach Ertz. I will say under. I think that there's more targets in the offense. You have a Deshaun Jackson there. You have Alshon Jeffrey that looks healthy. You have J.J. Arcega-Whiteside that they really, really like. You have Dallas Goedert. You have these running backs that can catch. I think Ertz does have some regression this year, moves down under 100 catches. What wide receivers do you like the most in Philly? Deshaun Jackson, I suppose. I think he's a little hurt right now. I think he's a little banged up. But I like Deshaun Jackson the most, but he doesn't provide the strongest week-to-week value. His floor is definitely not as high as some other receivers because he is a peaks and valley type of player where he could go off for 2 touchdowns, 6 catches, 120 yards, but he could have another week where he goes 2 catches, 40 yards, and a dud, because he caught his 2 deep balls, his 2 deep passes, but nothing else. So a peaks and valleys type of player, not targeting Jeffrey. You can get Whiteside later in the drafts. You have to kind of know your league mates on some of the deeper guys like that if they're going to actually pull a guy like that up. I'm not sure Arcega-Whiteside has week-to-week value. Definitely a good DFS play for sure. I think a guy like J.J. Arcega week-to-week. So I'll say Deshaun Jackson, not really targeting many there. If I can get Deshaun Jackson at value, I'll throw him on my bench in the wide receiver slot. Next up, we have the Redskins. What receivers do you like in Washington? I'll take some Trey Quinn. Trey Quinn with Case Keenum at the helm. I think we've seen something like this before. Adam Thielen, ever heard of him? Short little white guy. Case Keenum seems to be the type. I don't know. That's his thing. Likes those easy passing routes, short, intermediate routes. Guy that can do some moves at the line of scrimmage, like Quinn, like Thielen. Even in Denver, he was passing to Hamilton a lot, Patrick a lot. The third, wide receiver was getting a ton of work. Patrick last season for the Broncos, and people weren't even owning him in fantasy, and he was getting just as much work as Sutton and Hamilton. So I think Trey Quinn will benefit from Keenum at the helm. But how long does Case Keenum stay at the starting position? That's the only issue. So Trey Quinn's the only guy that I'll take there at the wide receiver position, not targeting Dotson, not targeting Richardson, McLaurin, I'm not sure how you say his name. The kid that played with Haskins at Ohio State, not drafting him right now, doesn't have any standalone value at all. What running backs do you like in Washington? What running backs? Adrian Peterson really late? Police are going by. There goes the police. Maybe an ambulance, I don't know. Anyways, what running backs do I like in Washington? Adrian Peterson, Darius Geis, Chris Thompson, that's all of them. I like all of them, right? But I'm not going to draft any of them. Adrian Peterson has some value at the back end of drafts if you can get him for free. Chris Thompson you can get for free. Darius Geis you have to kind of go out and target and take a little bit of risk to go and get him to kind of benefit from his upside. Not going to draft any of them, but I like them. Probably should have worded this question a little bit better. Do you trust Keenum? Is he draftable? No. Keenum hasn't been draftable for last year, the year after that. He's not a guy that I have any interest in and doesn't have a ton of upside. He kind of reminds me of like an Alex Smith type, in Washington, of course. Why wouldn't he? But in the sense that, we completely overlook these guys. Yeah, I'm telling you he's not draftable, but he can go out and score 3 touchdowns week 1. I really hope that he doesn't because the Eagles defense, I think I'm going to start them that week, so I hope he doesn't. But Alex Smith has done that in years past where everyone's completely written him off in fantasy. He just walks out there week 1, tosses like 178 yards, nothing super impressive in the passing. But he has like 3 touchdowns, like 3 easy walk-in touchdowns for his receivers or something like that. So, yeah, I've written off Case Keenum. I don't think he's going to go ahead and do anything like that, but I just think that's kind of funny. The Alex Smith-Washington thing kind of had me thinking that. All right, so New York Giants, are you drafting Eli Manning? No, I'm not. Eli Manning will probably get replaced by Daniel Jones. The New York media and fans are absolutely ridiculous, and they don't run the city or the team, but they do have a big say about it, and the team seems very swayed by public opinion. I think that Eli Manning will get pulled at some point this season. Over under 1,900 all-purpose yards for Saquon Barkley. I will say yes, because I think he is a machine. I think he's going to get fed. He is the bell cow that moves the entire state of New York, or at least the Giants fandom and of their nation, if you will. He pulls the whole damn thing on his back, whether he's running, catching the ball, whatever he's doing. He's going to be out there producing. However they want to use him, he's going to get a lot of work. He's going to get a ton of yards. Yeah, I'm going to say over 1,900 yards. He had over 2,000 last year, so give it to me again. Going to go down as like a Hall of Fame talent as long as he doesn't get hurt. I hope that wasn't too much. Is Evan Ingram a top 5 tight end? No, not this year. I think he'll slip just out of it. I'm going to pull him to my number 6 spot on my rankings when I update them, just because I'm seeing Sterling Shepard a little bit more healthy. He's going to be there. He's not going to be getting the volume that I was kind of anticipating him to get early on, because they are going to be healthier more sooner than later. So I think the first couple of games he'll have pretty much top 5 tight end potential. But beyond that, once Golden Tate gets back and they're a little bit more spread out with talent, I think he is going to come back down to earth. So I have him probably just outside the top 5, like 7 or 8, 5, 6, something like that, or whatever, 6, 7, 8, not 5. Cowboys, where's Zeke? Have you seen him? No? All right, yeah, I haven't seen him either. Should be back around soon, I hope. They've been in talks. They gave him another contract offer the other day that would make him paid just as close to Gurley. So where is he? He's in Cabo, not in the NFL right now, or at least with his team. I think he'll be back soon. I don't think there's too much to worry. If he misses time, then maybe a game or two. He has no leverage in this situation whatsoever. I think he just wanted to sit out of training camp like any good football player does. Is Amari Cooper a wide receiver 1? Yes, he is a wide receiver 1. Dak Prescott and him have a great rapport together. Amari Cooper was a wide receiver 1 every week. He was with the Cowboys last season. So from weeks 9 on, he was a wide receiver 1. Dak Prescott was a top 10 quarterback in all those weeks. So they have a great rapport together. They're connecting on deep balls, intermediate routes. I like what I see there. Definitely Amari Cooper, wide receiver 1. Are you drafting Dak Prescott? Yes, I am. I drafted him this past weekend. Dak Prescott is a good quarterback to go ahead and draft. He's a guy that you would want to have in the back end of your draft if you're pairing him with another, not necessarily flyer quarterback, but a quarterback that's going late that has upside, but you may not want to start every single week, i.e. my exact situation. I drafted Ben Roethlisberger, and I believe Dak Prescott back-to-back. I'd have to check the draft, but I believe I drafted him back-to-back 11 and 12, and I was the second to last team to get a quarterback. I was sitting there between Phillip Rivers and Ben Roethlisberger, and I was going back and forth between both of them, and I said, I'll take Ben here because I'll probably wind up getting Rivers somewhere else because I'm targeting quarterbacks in this range all over the place, and typically you can get them anytime that you want them as long as you're not, not as long as you're not doing anything. You can get them wherever you want. If you really want, you can take Phillip Rivers in the 7th round. But what I'm saying is later in the drafts, you'll see the quarterback positions fill up on other teams, and you'll have a sense of when you can pull the trigger on those guys. So I took Roethlisberger, honestly, on the sense that I'll probably get Rivers somewhere else at some point, and I don't want all my eggs in one basket. I drafted Dak Prescott behind Ben because I want a quarterback that can run the ball, that has some upside in the running game. Dak had 6 rushing touchdowns last season. Pretty sure he's had at least 6 touchdowns or 5 rushing touchdowns every season thus far. So he does get used in that. There are a lot of walk-in touchdowns. They're really simple. He's not going off for big rushing drives. But you want that upside. You want a guy that does have the ability to, manage the pocket enough to the point where he says, hey, I can just walk in right there. That's nice. Free touchdown. So yeah, drafting Dak Prescott because I already have drafted Dak Prescott. All right, next division. Rolling along. AFC North. We're looking at the Bengals here. Is Joe Mixon an RB1? Yes, he is. He is going to get used a lot in that offense. I think that he is a candidate to catch over 70 balls in the running back category this year. I think that he's going to get a lot of runs to the outside, a lot of pitches, a lot of catches. He's a patient runner, very similar to Le'Veon Bell, has a ton of talent, and I think that he is going to get a lot of volume this year for the Bengals, especially because A.J. Green is going to be out and because Zach Taylor is going to want to limit the risk of Andy Dalton out of the gate. I do think that he wants Andy Dalton to be the guy because he has the most experience there. He has the most talent. But at the same time, you got a guy like Ryan Finley that's breathing hard down the neck of Andy Dalton. Finley could come in and honestly take this job in weeks 1 through 3. I can see it because Dalton does have a history of making just bonehead mistakes. So if he continues that theme of his past, then I could definitely see Ryan Finley coming in, because that kid can get the ball out of his hands quickly. And that offensive line is not good. They're going to be under a lot of blitzes, under a lot of action behind the line of scrimmage. So if Andy Dalton can't do it, they have a guy right behind him that is capable and has shown that he can come in and move the chains for the offense. So I like Joe Mixon a lot this year. Go get him, RB1. Are you drafting A.J. Green? No, I'm not. A.J. Green, I think, was auto-drafted in this previous Sunday's draft in round 4, so I can't really give any depth information from personal experience. But I would not take A.J. Green just because he already has shown this one injury thus far. That's not a good sign for later in the year. Don't want to draft him. Wait for him to come back. Everything's going good. Okay, he's back, and then he's hurt again. I don't want to risk it. I'd rather have Tyler Boyd. Tyler Boyd, I have somewhere between wide receiver 18 and 22, somewhere in that range. I think that he can provide some consistency to their pass-catching game, but I do believe that Mixon and Bernard will be used a lot in the pass-catching game. You look for those guys to get a lot of catches this year. Damian Williams is going to be filling in for A.J. Green while Green is out. Excuse me. I don't see him as a big threat. I just see him having opportunity, and sometimes opportunity does equal production. Is Damian Williams draftable? Third down. Yeah, he's draftable. I think you can get him for free in rounds 18 plus or 16 plus. So yeah, he's a free draftable player. He is draftable. Yes, because he has value the first several weeks that A.J. Green is out, and he'll just have opportunity. So he's definitely worth a bench stash for sure. Fourth down for the Bengals. Is Andy Dalton draftable? Sad to say he's not. Andy Dalton, like I just got done saying, has that consistency of making those bonehead plays, inconsistent passing. Just not a guy that I want on my roster whatsoever. Starting quarterback, bench quarterback, don't want him. He has an opportunity, or at least had more opportunity when you had A.J. Green there. At least I was more comfortable in that situation where I was thinking he could have a bigger year. But no, I mean, he needs a really juicy matchup, to start Andy Dalton any week. He's got to be playing Miami. He's got to be playing his own defense, Cincinnati. You know what I mean? There isn't too many teams out there that he can go up against that I'm going to feel really comfortable starting him over, even like a guy like Matt Stafford, who I was talking about before. If I have Matt Stafford going up a team like Miami, and I have Andy Dalton going up against, we'll just say a pass-friendly, the Rams, right? They're going to be a game where the Rams are scoring a lot of points, and they're going to be able to score a lot of points or throw the ball a lot. I would still probably go Matt Stafford, just because Andy Dalton's upside, it just hasn't shown yet. He just hasn't shown any consistency for me in recent work. So not someone I'm targeting. Cleveland. Is OBJ a wide receiver 1? Close. He's pretty close if he's healthy. If he's healthy, actually 16 games, yeah, he should be a wide receiver 1. It's just I'm not sure how Cleveland is going to use the pass game versus the rushing game. I think that they're going to rush more. Other people say they're going to pass a lot. We're not sure what we're going to see. I think that the slow ground and pound of Nick Chubb opens up more opportunities because you're going to lure in the defense, into that run game, and then open up spots for your receivers in Landry, OBJ, and Njoku. So I'm not certain. I think he's a fringe guy, wide receiver 1, wide receiver 2. His durability comes into question, of course, because of his inconsistency of staying on the field for a full year. If he plays a full year, yeah, I'll definitely put him at wide receiver 10 through 12, no problem. Does Kareem Hunt hurt Nick Chubb's value? Yes, he does, because Kareem Hunt will come back at some point, and it will hurt Nick Chubb's value eventually. Nick Chubb, is going to get rested when Kareem Hunt when he comes back, because if they're making a run for the playoffs, they're not going to overwork Chubb. They will pull back his workload some when Hunt comes back, and that is something that you should worry about with Chubb. I don't know about taking him, early in the first round. I'd like to take him more into the early second round if I can, but based on people's valuation of him, that's a difficult task right now. A lot of people are moving him up in the mid first round after that big group of running backs, because those are most of the people that believe Cleveland will run a lot. So not really sure what to expect there with Chubb in the Hunt situation, but I do believe Hunt does hurt his value. I think that I don't know how you don't think that it doesn't. I don't know how it wouldn't. Hunt, yes, won't be there for most of the year, and he's going to be working out on his own. He's not going to be with the team, but they're going to come back and he's going to come back and they're just going to use him. They just will, because they do value Chubb and they do want to keep him healthy for the playoffs. Next up is Baker, a top 5 QB. Has the potential? has the potential in that offense. If they're a pass-heavy team or the run game just opens up so much for the passing game, yeah, I do think Baker can be a top 5 quarterback, probably number 5. There's a lot of talent at the position. There's a lot of volatility each year, like, who's going to be a top guy, who's not, outside of a select few, like Aaron Rodgers, Deshaun Watson, obviously, the past couple of years. So top five, Baker. Yeah, I think he'll be a top 5. I think he'll be number 5 or 6, probably. I think he's really close. You just need things to get rolling there for the Browns. I think that's him hitting a ceiling. I don't think he goes much higher than that, but I do believe Baker Mayfield will hit a ceiling this year. I like what he shows. He's got a real good edge to him, kind of like a little baby Brett Favre. I don't know what you think about him, but I think he's got a ton of upside with the players that he has around him. They've just put so much talent in that offense with him. I don't know what's not to like. Next up is Pittsburgh. We have who benefits the most from the Antonio Brown absence. I'm going to say Juju and James Conner. Who benefits the most from Antonio Brown leaving? Juju and Conner right away. I think that's the simple answer because they're going to get leaned on a little bit more than everybody else as Moncrief, Washington, Vance, they all solidify their roles in the offense. Even the backup running back, Samuels, Benny Snell, Xavier Grimble at tight end. Just like saying his name. Yeah, I mean, as all these other guys really solidify their roles, I think Juju and Conner are going to get used a lot, especially in the first 4 to 5 weeks. So those two are the guys that benefit the most from AB leaving or his absence. Is Big Ben a top 5 quarterback? Again, has the potential to be. I'm not sure that he is, though. I think the volume is going to get pulled back some in the passing game to protect some of these wide receivers and not overwork them because their depth is kind of shallow in Pittsburgh. Washington is technically a project. Moncrief is coming back, to kind of solidify his career almost. And then you got a guy like Ryan Switzer, who's just kind of a Cole Beasley type of slot guy, not super fast, doesn't have a breakaway speed, but he can, work inside the routes, intermediate routes, short running routes, break open zones, things like that. There's just no one really overwhelming beyond the top 2 guys. So I think that Ben will dial it back a little bit this year. The big chunk plays are, probably going to be a little bit more limited. As we saw them against the Titans, they were dinking, dunking, a lot of intermediate throws. So yeah, I think that Big Ben's going to get pulled back a little bit this year. I'd say he's definitely has potential to still be a top 10. I think that's easy with the opportunity that he has just with the scheme that they run. They are aggressive still, and they do push the ball down the field. So I do think he can still be a top 10 guy, but is he in the top 5? I'm not sure. Who do you prefer more, Dante Moncrief or James Washington? I prefer James Washington based off of his upside and his skill and his talent. But Dante Moncrief has been working with the ones. He's been working with Ben in preseason and training camp. So James Washington has been playing with the 2s. He's been impressing everyone, but he's been impressing them with the secondary starters. Mason Rudolph is at quarterback. So not sure what to expect there with those guys. I think that James Washington will earn more touches, earn more time on the field, and eventually be that secondary guy. But right now, it's Moncrief and even Switzer. They even have Switzer ahead of James Washington. Switzer's been working more with the ones than James Washington has. So a situation to monitor, but I prefer James Washington more. I'll stash him on my bench and hopefully he goes off. Next up, we have the Ravens. Is Mark Ingram a running back 1? No, he's not. He is a running back 2. I don't think that he's actually going to get the volume that we think this year with the other running backs that are there, with Lamar Jackson stealing volume in the red zone, his own rushing game, that is. I don't think he's going to have enough to eat, enough opportunities to eat this year to earn a running back 1 spot. I really, really like Justice Hill behind Mark Ingram. I think that Justice Hill is the Kamara to Ingram. I think that that's real. I think that that's possible. Just looking at his skill set, if they can get him into space, Hill could be the most dangerous guy on the entire team outside of Lamar Jackson. So, like Mark Ingram, not an RB1, RB2, pushing 3 some weeks. What pass catcher are you targeting most often for the Ravens? None of them. None of them is probably the answer. Willie Snead you can pretty much get for free at the back end of your drafts. Marquise Brown, Miles Boykins. There's been some hype around those guys, more specifically Boykins, but I wouldn't know where to tell you to draft them. They don't have a quarterback that I believe in the passing game. I believe Lamar Jackson adds to the ROS values of Ingram, Hill, Gus Edwards, all the running backs, but he doesn't add a ton to the pass catchers because he's not a guy that's going to stand in the pocket and deliver. They're talking about him passing the ball 30 times plus this year per game. That's crazy. He's a running quarterback. You do not want Lamar Jackson making 30 passes in a game. Okay, let's wrap it up here. Last two divisions. We have the NFC West. Looking at the Rams, first down, we have over under 4,500 passing yards for Jared Goff. I'm going to go ahead and say the over. With Sean McVay there, with all the wide receiver weapons that he has, there's a ton of potential there. Jared Goff has been called the bus driver before, that he's just the guy at the helm of the system, right? He's just the one that's benefiting the most from it. Great, that's awesome, cool. He can drive my bus any day, no problem. I'll take Jared Goff early into the mid rounds. Would take him as early as round 6 or 7. I have no problem going up and getting him. Jared Goff, Russell Wilson, Matt Ryan, those are guys that I'm willing to go up and get ahead of the later quarterback pools. So yeah, over 4,500 yards for Jared Goff. I think that's a great number to go ahead and bet the over on. I think he can actually come close to 5,000 this year, to be honest, based off of their system. What wide receiver do I prefer the most? I want to get the last one in my draft. So Woods, Cooks, and then I'll take Kupp or whatever order it falls into. I just don't want to be the guy that prioritizes it and takes the risk and placates one of those guys as the best guy to take. I think that they're all going to eat from each other. I think that Cooper Kupp does have some reserve upside in the fact that Goff did favor him last year or when he was healthy. So look for him as kind of like the value pick of the 3, in my opinion. Am I drafting Todd Gurley? Yeah, I'll draft Todd Gurley. I'll bring him into the late 2nd round, early 3rd round. No problem whatsoever. A lot of people are fading him, but the Rams have made it very clear vocally that they're committed to him. He is still going to run the ball. He is still going to be a part of the offense. He will have carries, probably some catches as well. With a high-octane offense like the Rams, you have to like some upside in Todd Gurley. Darrell Henderson hasn't done very much with his opportunities so far. So yeah, I'm still drafting Todd Gurley. Obviously, there's some risk there. If I'm putting a share into Todd Gurley, then most likely I'm going to have some other running backs, right? If I'm having a flex spot's definitely got to be filled out by the running back so that if he does go down, I have some depth there and I can reach into my my running back bench. Moving to the Cardinals, over under 1,500 total yards for David Johnson. I'm going to say over. I'm going to say probably under 1,000 yards rushing, but he is going to have most likely 700 to 900 yards receiving. The air raid offense, Cliff Kingsbury playbook is going to benefit the running back in the system, especially a guy with David Johnson and his skill set and what he can provide to the air raid. So, being a pass catcher, being a speedy guy that can hit outside the numbers as a running back, it's all really important for their playbook. I think he's going to get a lot of action and a ton of PPR scoring this year. What receivers are you targeting from the Cardinals? I can tell you that I'm not targeting Christian Kirk, and I'll take just about everybody else. Give me Larry Fitzgerald, give me Andy Isabella, give me Keyshawn Johnson. Sucks that Akeem Butler went down, but right now Kirk is just going way, way too expensive for me. Getting drafted ahead of Larry Fitzgerald is just crazy to me. Fitzgerald has vacuum hands. Dude's a Hall of Famer, can truly play outside the numbers where the space is going to be available for him. With all the wide receivers spread out, he's going to be able to come into the middle field, still go down the outside of the field. There's a lot of opportunity for him there. So Fitzgerald will be the guy I'm targeting the most, but getting shares of Johnson or Isabella late is not a bad idea either. Are you drafting Kyler Murray? No, I'm not. The places where he's getting drafted are around like the Ben Roethlisberger, Phillip Rivers area. And I'd rather take someone like that that's a little bit more experienced, that has a little bit more of a sample size, right? Kyler Murray's still a rookie. I love his eye test. I love the arm strength. I love the accuracy, but just not sure of taking that risk. There is some upside there with the way that the offense is set up, but I do see him coming in, probably still making some mistakes here and there, and that's not something I'm willing to put into my lineup, the first couple weeks of the season. So wait and see on him for sure. 49ers, is Garoppolo in trouble? Short answer is yes. Long-term answer is probably not. In the short term, he needs to pick it up. He needs to show us something a little bit more, and more importantly, his coaches. And I don't know why I'm talking about us, but he needs to do more on the field with what he's been given. And the mistakes, if they're made, he's going to get pulled quick, guys. Nick Mullins showed that he's perfectly capable. They have CJ Beathard there too behind him. They have guys there that can get the job done. If Garoppolo's not doing it, they're going to go to somebody else. So he is in trouble. If he gets it together, that would be great for the other shares of the offense that we have. The Matt Breidas, Debo's, Goodwin's, Pettis, et cetera. So everyone wants to see him get going, because if he's going, then the ceilings for everyone else are going way up, and they're not maybe as high with like a Nick Mullins or CJ Beathard. What running backs are you targeting? I want Matt Breida. I want Matt Breida over Tevin Coleman right now, mostly because he's being drafted behind Tevin Coleman, and Tevin Coleman hasn't been as impressive, or at least isn't really living up to the hype that we would like from Coleman. Will get used in the passing game, is still going to get plenty of rushing attempts. But I just see the upside right now with Matt Breida. He's played really well in the preseason, done really well in training camp. If he stays healthy, I think he's the guy to have in San Francisco. What wide receivers are you targeting in San Francisco? I want the later guys. Give me all of Debo and Jalen Hurd, Debo Samuel and Jalen Hurd. Give me those guys, because there's no real cost to drafting them. Drafting like Pettis or Pettis or Goodwin, you're putting yourself at a little bit more risk there. I think Pettis has had some troubles in camp, with the coaching staff not being set as a number one, as he was at the end of last season. So that's a storyline to kind of look out for if he's actually still getting like wide receiver one snaps. I don't think he's going to. I think Debo is going to outwork him. Hurd's going to outwork him, as well as Goodwin too. So I think that he's falling down the charts there. Over under 1,200 yards for George Kittle. I think it's going to be under 1,200 yards this year for George Kittle. I think there is going to be some regression there. I think all the other targets that have come in, they're going to eat up a lot of shares of the offense. So I do see him coming in under 1,200 yards, but I could see him still hitting over 100 catches. Last team in this division, the Seahawks. Are you drafting Tyler Lockett or DK Metcalf? I'll draft Tyler Lockett. Right now, Metcalf has a little bit more stock up because David Moore's hurt. Metcalf will probably come back in week 1 or week 2 of the season, so his value should go up, but I'm still not necessarily like pulling for him. I'm not sure if I can trust him based off of his injury past and his prone ability to be injured. Over under 1,250 all-purpose yards for Chris Carson. I'm going to say over. I'm going to say he hits 1,000 to 1,100 rushing yards, and they've talked about using him plenty in the passing game. So I think he has a safe floor from week to week. Seattle wants to establish the running game. They want to use him a lot. They want to protect Russell Wilson. So I think Chris Carson is a guy to have this year. Go target him in like the 3rd or 4th round, no problem whatsoever. That's a great space to get a bell cow back if he winds up being used in that capacity, and I think he will. Over under 3,800 passing yards for Russell Wilson. I'm going to say under, but I will say that he'll have over 4,000 total yards, rushing and passing. So give me like 3,700 passing yards, 400 to 500 rushing yards. I think he will have to do a little bit more on his legs this year, given the lack of wide receiver depth. He has his tight ends there. They are healthy, but last year they all were beat up and they were struggling to find options at tight end. Ed Dixon wound up being a guy for them that they were using consistently down the stretch. So I think that he will be limited in the passing game, which is really unfortunate because Russell Wilson throws a damn good ball, great pocket presence, no one's to make the run for it. So a really good quarterback who I'm targeting this year. Just think he'll be at, like I said, 3,700 passing yards. Look for him to mix things in with his feet in the run game. Okay, last but certainly not least, the AFC West, last division. Chiefs, over under 45 touchdowns for Patrick Mahomes. Give me the under, slightly under. Give me 44 to 44 touchdowns this year for Patrick Mahomes. I think we will see some regression. Very unlikely we see another quarterback hit 50 touchdowns back-to-back years. Hey, could be done. If there's a place where it's going to be done, it's probably Kansas City. I just think realistically they really work in these running backs. Both Williams, Damian, and Darwin Thompson, they'll get a fair amount of usage out of them. I do think that Damian Williams is an RB1, which is my second question here. Is Damian Williams a running back 1? I believe he is. I think he's got to stay healthy to hit that mark. He's got to play in 16 games. If he plays in 14 or 15, I think he's going to be fringe. But I think he's definitely a guy that can catch 600, 800 yards, rush for 600, 800 yards, no problem, and get a ton of catches and handfuls of touchdowns. Somewhere from like 8 to 10 touchdowns this year, I'd say, for Dame Williams. But I think that's a pretty steady projection for most players on the team. Hill, Kelsey, Williams. Not so sure on Hardman or Watkins or Darwin getting that type of touchdown volume, but I think that he can realistically hit that mark, like 4 catching, 4 rushing, not that difficult, 5 and 5, 4 and 5, some type of combination like that. Outside of Hill and Kelsey, what receivers do you like the most? Mecole Hardman. That's about it. I'm not a fan of Sammy Watkins. I'm not going to draft him this year, and it's not about being a fan. It's just that his body of work is not very impressive to me. He doesn't really pass the eye test. A guy that comes in a step slower every year, isn't durable, can get banged up, can be out of the lineup. I like Hardman. If Watkins goes out of the lineup, I almost like Hardman more than Hill because he'll have a lot of opportunity playing behind Hill, but still as a starter. Hardman's very, very fast, very similar to the prototype of Hill. So I like his upside quite a bit. Outside of a guy like Hill or Kelsey, I won't be targeting Watkins for his value where he's going right now. The Raiders. Are you drafting Antonio Brown? Yes, I will draft Antonio Brown. Do I want to draft him? Not necessarily. He's going in the he's going in the second or third round. He's not going in the first round anymore. His health is the big concern, right? I'm really not too worried about the going away for games, not playing in games because the team's doing bad. I'm not worried about that. I'm worried about his damn feet. When he runs really fast, he says they're really warm. That's concerning. Like, that should be a big deal, right? So if he's there, he's good to go. If he's there, if you know that he's starting, yeah, you definitely want to draft him. So maybe some things come out here in the next couple of days where we get more information. We'll see, about his feet, about his availability, what he's looking like for week 1 and going forward. But yeah, I'll draft him. Some risk, high reward. Over under 1,200 total yards for Josh Jacobs. I will say over that. I think he's going to get used a lot in the rushing and the passing game. They do have Jalen Richard back there that will catch balls, but Josh Jacobs is a bell cow type of back. He's been used a ton in college. He'll get used a ton with the Raiders as long as he's healthy. And I think if Antonio Brown is on the field, it really increases his value a lot. If Antonio Brown plays in 10 games plus, 1,200 total yards for Jacobs, easy, no problem. Who is my favorite Hard Knocks character? Hunter Renfrow and Darren Waller, because they're like so opposite. Hunter Renfrow's like this yuppity up, straight and narrow, got this nice haircut. My dad has the same haircut. And then Darren Waller's just on like the grind, coming back from drug rehabilitation and whatnot. They showed some clips of him on a previous Baltimore Ravens team. Harbaugh giving him a hard time, like, man, look so good out here. Turns out it's the drugs. Don't do drugs, kids. Not good for being a football player. Darren Waller, Hunter Renfrow, solid entertainment. Obviously, Antonio Brown brings a special element to the Hard Knocks. But Oakland, they have final control over all creative that gets put out. So, it is what it is. I didn't watch last night's episode yet, so that's still on my to-do list. I'll be getting around to that here eventually. Are you drafting Darren Waller? Yes and no. I'll get him at the back end of my drafts. He's a fast tight end, one of the fastest in the league. I think there's like several plays he's been clocked over like 20 miles per hour. Very shifty, just not very strong. He's transitioning to the position. So I'm not really sure what to expect as far as like a week-to-week floor. But I definitely think he's worth a dart throw later end of the drafts. Not too many people are targeting him, to be honest. Sorry. A lot of teams here building up the cough. The Chargers. Are you drafting Melvin Gordon? No, not drafting Melvin Gordon. Too rich for my skin or my blood, whatever. Going in the 3rd or 4th round still. We have no idea when he's coming back, if he's going to be there start of the year, week 4, week 8. I'm not sure. No one knows. Don't draft him. There's no concrete information out there that's really lending us any reliable information. I think that was a double, whatever. Ezekiel Elliott situation, a lot more clear, right? That situation is a lot more easier to handle because Ezekiel Elliott has no leverage in that situation whatsoever. Melvin Gordon has a little bit more. So the Chargers may just wind up riding without him. They're not a team that traditionally pays running backs or anyone really big contracts for that matter. So no, not drafting Melvin Gordon. Who do you prefer, Eckler or Jackson? I prefer Eckler, has a little bit more upside with the pass catching ability. Jackson should get a fair amount of usage on 1st and 2nd down, but I prefer Eckler just because he's a big chunk play type of guy, can catch a screen and take it for 30 or 40 yards, no problem. So he has a little bit more upside to me. I'll still take Jackson just 3 to 4 rounds after where Eckler is going. Still provides some steady value, but in PPR formats, I think Eckler just has a stronger edge. Over under 30 passing touchdowns for Phillip Rivers. I'm going to say over. has a lot of weapons in the passing game this year. Just got done talking about Melvin Gordon not being available. Could need to push the ball down the field with the passing game a little bit more often. Hunter Henry, Mike Williams, Keenan Allen, the weapons are there. Austin Eckler, pass catcher. You still have Jackson there. Detrez Newtown, whatever. Newsome. He catches balls out of the backfield. A lot of guys that can catch the ball there. That's the point I'm trying to make. A lot of weapons for Rivers. Very accurate quarterback. A guy that really has a great sense of getting the ball out of the pocket as it's collapsing. A lot of skills to like about him. A lot of things to favor for their offense in general. Over 30 passing touchdowns. I think he hits it easy. All right, last team, the Broncos. Do I trust Joe Flacco to keep teammates' values up, ROS values up all year? I do. I do believe that he can. I think that they have a strong group there in the wide receiver room. Sanders, Sutton, Hamilton. They have Royce Freeman. They have Phillip Lindsay. They have weapons there. They have some good players. You have Noah Fant. You have Jake Butt there. Noah Fant a little bit banged up right now. Jake Butt probably going to be the starter. But do I trust Flacco? Yeah. I mean, he showed me enough to believe that they're not going to be a bad offense, that they should move the ball down the field. It's just going to be a little bit of a different flow that we're used to. And it kind of shows to me that the Ravens were really holding Flacco back. The setup that they were just rolling out was not benefiting him whatsoever. And he just needed to, change the scenery. That's it. Sometimes that's all you need. Are you drafting Emmanuel Sanders? Yes, I will draft him later in the draft. If I can get him in the 9th round or later, I feel like I have won. It's a success for me. But I will also grab Deshaun Hamilton even after him. So, Emmanuel Sanders is kind of like the trigger that you need to start thinking about Hamilton. If you see Sanders go, you should be thinking about grabbing Hamilton within a round or two later from that, because he's going to go quick. People are going to see that Sanders isn't available. Deshaun Hamilton, pretty much the same guy or can do the same things. So that's what people typically tend to do. Or they'll handcuff Sanders with Hamilton. So definitely don't let the pick go back to that person. Who do you prefer, Royce Freeman or Phillip Lindsay? I'm not going to draft either one. I think that both of them are going to provide beneficial roles to their team. Pass catching in Lindsay, Royce Freeman with the running and blocking, passing or running game, or duties, I should say. First, second down runner, blocking, etc. Between the two, I'm not really sure who to favor. I'm not drafting either of them because they're both going to eat at each other until one gets hurt. But Royce Freeman's had a lot of positive things said about him. Phillip Lindsay obviously had a great year last year, but was, flash in the pan, to be brutally honest. I mean, he just came out of nowhere and just put out this great performance. Can he do it again? That's the question. And I think a lot of people are starting to doubt that he will. So a lot of talk around Royce Freeman right now. I'm not going to take either one just because I don't want to be locked in or trapped to one versus the other. If I get the guy that goes up or I get the guy that goes down, there is some risk there, right? You could hit on one but miss on the other. Just not a situation I want to get into. There's a lot of other running backs that are ahead of them that I'm going to be drafting. So the spaces where these guys are drafting, I'm probably drafting my wide receiver depth. All right, very last question. Who do I prefer, Cortland Sutton or Deshaun Hamilton? Deshaun Hamilton all day. Cortland is similar to like a Christian Kirk, a guy that I'm going to stay away from. A little bit too rich for me. If he gets drafted ahead of Sanders, that's still crazy for me. Sanders is so athletic still. I know he's coming back from the injury, but he just looks so good. I don't know how you could draft Sutton over Sanders or Hamilton. Kind of a bigger body guy. Not sure it really fits what Flacco needs. Flacco needs easy targets, fast-moving targets, moving along the line of scrimmage, slants, intermediate passing, and Sutton's more of a deeper guy. He can body up somebody, body up a defensive back, and beat him on coverage, but you have to trust Flacco to throw a good ball to that spot, and that's not what I want. I want Flacco throwing his guys open, and I don't see Cortland Sutton being that type of option. So go ahead and grab Deshaun Hamilton over him. That's the hot stove. We've finished cooking up all these questions here. Reviewed everything in depth, I hope, enough for you. If you have any further questions, if I didn't touch on something, then please let me know. Shoot me a message. Like, share, subscribe. Thanks for stopping by for another episode. I'll see you guys next time. I'm super excited for the season to come up. Ready to go. Hope you guys are too. See ya.